Hey everyone, today we're taking a look at the B0127 Mantis, which is part of the Vermin series from the company Sexy Ice 2019. They're a newer company that was established in 2019, and this is actually their first figure they put out, and I'm pretty excited for this one. I thought it looked pretty cool in the promo shots, and it seems to have like a Reveltech-esque articulation setup, which I tend to enjoy, so hopefully it's as good as it looked in all the photos. Also for this video, I'm testing out a new camera and audio setup, so let me know how it looks and sounds and if you like it. Here's a look at the package. It's relatively plain with a black background, but it does have this cool line art on the front here. I like that. It says Artificial Evolution B0127 Mantis, and then Vermin down here at the bottom and the company name in the corner. It's also got Artificial Evolution B0127 on the side here. We'll assume it says the same thing on this side, although I don't know for sure. And then some more art on the back that looks pretty neat. Here she is out of the package. I think she looks great. I love this color scheme they've gone with the pink and green, and where it has kind of a gradient coming from the lighter off-whitish and pink down into the green on the arms and the legs. There's also a bit of like darker pinkish purple in the eyes that looks really nice. The antennas are something that had me a bit concerned from the photos, because I thought if those are little plastic pieces and this figure takes a shelf dive, they're going to break off for sure. But to my surprise, they're actually metal pieces. So I have a little magnet here, and you can see she magnetizes to it. So that's great. Still probably a little risky to have them being so thin. Less so because they're metal, so maybe they'll just bend if it falls off a shelf. I'd still be concerned that they break out of their little connection point on the figure though, but I don't think it's going to be as big of an issue as I thought it might be. Taking a bit of a closer look at some of these details, the face that comes on her in the package is a bit human-esque. It does have the big anime eyes and kind of the suggestion of a nose and a little mouth there. The other two we'll see in a bit are a little bit more bug-like. And then if we were to tilt her head down, she looks very mantis-like from the top view there, which is very cool. I really like this purplish pink gradient going on the eyes, and these eyes are a bit glossy, which is nice. That's against the rest of the figure, which overall is relatively satinish, I would say. It's not too glossy, but it does have a slight shine to it. There are a lot of details going on throughout the torso, which look really good. It looks like a bug carapace, which is cool. More of that really nice gradient going from green to pink to kind of off-whitish throughout there. And then in the little crevices here on the torso, there's some brown weathering that looks really nice. That all continues around onto the back as well. There are a couple holes for accessories on the back here on the arms. Can't really avoid that though. I don't think they're too unsightly, and they're hidden from any view except directly on the back. So that's not an issue for me. Maybe another thing to note is you can see the ball joints, but I feel like with the color they blend in pretty well with the rest of the figure. And down at the legs, more cool details. There's like a ridge running up the side of the hip here with little nubbins on it that are nice. Those come down onto the lower legs as well. And some more sculpted details like on the inner thigh and some down by the knee. And then she does have very tiny little dainty feet. And they're a bit pointy. but I haven't had any issues getting her to stand so far, which is good. So the aesthetic on this, I think, is fantastic. I don't have any complaints there. The paint is wonderful and exceeded my expectations of what I thought it would look like in person. It looked good in the photos, but I don't think they did it justice in just how nice the gradient with the pink and green is throughout. On to articulation. At the head, there's a bit of an interesting ball peg setup going on here, where there's a ball coming into the upper neck here, and then that comes up into a ball at the top of the head, and then out to a ball at the face, and then in the center there's a little hinge for this bit on the neck, this little neck flap. So then with that, there is a little bit of wiggle on the face and some rotation and wiggle at the top of the head. Looking up, she can look up all the way, and this little flap on the neck hinges out of the way so it doesn't cause any interference there. And then looking down just at the head, she can bury her chin into the neck, and then with the neck, she can look down really well. So no issues there. There's also side to side tilt, both in the neck and the head. So great range there. Rotation at the head. So you shouldn't have any limitations. Should be able to get some nuance posing. So I'm happy with that. At the shoulders, these are on kind of Revoltech ball hinges. You can see them better on the back here. And these also have kind of like a drop down shoulder situation where there's a ball peg down here, but their default position is kind of up here where the ball peg is positioned upward. But for some posing, if you need to, you can pull those down. And then on that hinge, they can go up all the way. Great range there. There are these little like armor plates in the front that will get in the way a little bit. If you just try to hinge them straight up, they'll start to clash. So that's when you want to bring the arm down and then hinge it up. There's also rotation at the shoulder where it connects to that ball hinge, and then down at the elbow, just a single joint on another one of those ball hinges, but does get pretty good range. And there's going to be rotation there as well, although a little bit stiffer than the shoulder. Then at the hand, this is the one area where I would say the figure is a bit limited. The hands are just on a tiny little ball peg, and where they connect to the wrist, they're kind of sculpted at an angle, and the wrist is sculpted a bit at an angle there as well. So you kind of just get rotation there and a little bit of wiggle, but not really anything that's going to be significant. It really just rotates around, unfortunately. There are some hands in other positions, though, which kind of sort of works around the issue. I just wish that they did ball hinges for these like Revoltech does and just continue the same kind of articulation scheme they have in the rest of the arm. So, for example, like these tiny ball hinges here. At the torso, this upper diaphragm, she'll lean back this much. Let's get the arm out of the way. And then forward this much. There is a little bit of a cutout on the back here, so you can see the double ball peg. And a little bit of gapping, but it's not too bad. And I'd rather have the articulation than avoid any sort of gapping, so it doesn't bother me too much. And then at the waist, with both the waist and the diaphragm, rather, she can bend back very far and then forward pretty far as well. There's also rotation at both of those joints and side to side tilt. The crotch and butt are kind of like a floating piece here that'll get out of the way for the legs. And the legs will go out this much. They do have a little bit of that Revoltech kind of diagonal cut at the leg. So you can kind of rotate these a bit to get the legs going out straight a little bit further. And these are on ball pegs in here, so you can kind of rotate and shift the leg around right at the hip. And then at the thigh cut, you can also rotate that, and it's also a ball peg, so there's a bit of wiggle there as well. And then depending how you want the hips to look, you can kind of finagle this and rotate it, because they have a bit of a different texture and sculpt depending on where you have them. I forgot to show her kicking forward and back, so we're just going to edit this in later. She can kick forward this much. There's a bit more range if you rotate the leg because it has this diagonal cut. So if you rotate it so the diagonal is going against this little floating piece, you can get more range there. And then back about that much. And then the legs can cross pretty well. So you can get some fun poses with that. At the knees, double jointed knees, they get pretty good range. And then at the tiny foot, these will go back about this much. Not the most. This little spiky bit on the back starts to clash into the ankle a bit. Oh, well, actually, I just realized there's a little cutout where that can slot into, so those get a bit more range. So that's nice. You can see the little cutout in the back there. And then going forward, you can go forward this much. And then there is an ankle rocker. So very good range overall. The only bit of disappointment I have is in the wrists. Like I said, I just wish those were little ball joints, ball hinges rather, like Revoltech does. I think it'll be okay with the extra hands that are included, but it is something to note, and it's not ideal for me at least. Speaking of the hands, she'll come with open hands, fist hands. I believe she's supposed to come with a pair of gripping hands, but mine came with one gripping hand and then an extra fist hand. So I contacted the place I got it from to see if they could potentially send me another gripping hand. We'll see. Once I hear back from them, I'll let you know in the comments if they end up replacing it or not. Open hands that are positioned with the wrist turned back a little bit more. So that's kind of how they get around there being no wrist hinge. open hands where the hands are splayed open even more and the wrist is turned back even further. This could probably be used for like some crawling poses or like a 3-point stance or something. And one right peace sign hand. And then these aren't technically hands, but they do slot onto the wrists. These kind of mantis-y claws that look pretty cool, and they have a nice red to green gradient going on there. It looks very nice. And these are on a little peg there so that another accessory can be slotted on, which are a pair of these articulated mantis-y claws. And these will come on a ball hinge, and here's how they kind of slot into that arm groove. And they fold up pretty well, and you can pose them around really nicely. But I believe you're supposed to be able to pop these off the ball hinge and put them on the little peg for the wrist. I'll try to do that off camera now. It took a little bit of heat from the hairdryer to get it popped off of that little peg, but it popped onto this other one nicely. It is a smidge loose on there. And then I found you can also just plug this little ball hinge into the wrist if you want as well. It's not quite as flush and seamless looking as this one. This one's sculpted a little bit better to fit in there. But you have a couple options there for the mantis-y hands. And then you can also pop the tiny little mantis claw onto the ball hinge there, so you can plug it into the back of the arm and have some articulation there. Or if you don't want to swap them, this one with the little rotatey bit, I think you can plug this in here as well. Oop. Doesn't hold in quite as well. And then you would just kind of get rotation there. So I think it's intended for these to go on the hands and the ball hinges to go on the wrist, and then just to swap them as needed. She'll also come with this big scythe that has like a mantis-y claw on the end here, and this looks really cool. There's a little pokey bit on the end. So this is sculpted really well, it's painted really nicely. It's just a cool accessory. And then to get that into the gripping hands, you can just pull off the pommel and then slide it into the hand. And there's like a notch at the end of the stick here, so you know which way the pommel goes on. And she holds that pretty well. So I like that. I think that's a pretty cool accessory. And then for faces, we saw this face that'll come on her in the package. It has the white eyes and a little mouth. It's the most sort of kind of humanish-esque one. But she'll also come with this one that looks a bit more armored and has red eyes. There's some nice sculpted detail coming around the chin with some little like spikies and a bit of a wash and weathering in there, so that looks nice. The red eyes are also swappable. So you can see here, it's kind of like a Revoltech sort of eye plate where you can push these out and swap them around. And then finally, she'll come with this one that has mandibles and looks a little bit spookier and bug-like. It has a big parasitic tendril coming out of one eye. This one's really cool. I like this one a lot. The tendril's sculpted well. It looks like it has nice motion to it. And it's painted well. It has some variations in the red with some darker bits and some lighter highlights. And the mandible face is really nice. You can see there's like 3 little mandible sections coming out on each side. It just looks really cool. This eye plate in here has a little peg on it for the tendril. So without it, just a little peg sticking out. But then if you want to swap those, like I said, you can it's a little bit of a struggle, but you should be able to get the eyes out. So the eye plate comes out like that, and then you could swap them and probably have the tendril face on this one if you'd prefer, or whichever one. I'll also say for initially swapping out the faces, I did have to heat them up just a little bit for them to slip onto that ball peg. It didn't take a ton of heat, just a little bit with the hairdryer, and they slipped on pretty easily though. And just so we know for sure, I went ahead and swapped the eye plate with the tendrils off the camera. So we could see that one's in the armored face plate now. And here's the face with the mouth and the red eyes. It's not the easiest to swap the eye plates out, I'll say, but it is possible. It didn't take too long to do, just a couple minutes. For size and comparisons, Mantis is standing at about 5.5 inches to the top of the head and closer to 7 inches to the top of the antenna. Here she is next to the SH Figuarts Naru Top 99 Sakura and Revoltech Araka. Here she is next to the SH Figuarts Suguru Geto and Thousand Toys Hellboy. I'm always trying to shoehorn any creature-like character in with Suguru Geto as a curse. He's still a great figure, and you should still go watch that review. Here she is with the SH Figuarts Kaiju number 8 and Kaiju number 9. I think she kind of fits in with the Kaiju aesthetic, but they do tower over her. I don't know when Kaiju number 9 got in such a sassy pose, but he's looking pretty sassy. And for a couple domestic figures, here she is with the NECA Last Ronin Leonardo and Marvel Legends X-Men 97 Nightcrawler. So overall, I like this figure a lot. It does have some flaws. It's not perfect, but I think it's a really strong showing for the company's first figure. The aesthetic overall is really cool. I love the paint job. I love the sculpt. For the most part, the articulation is really nice. It's kind of just the wrists that annoy me a little bit. I don't love the articulation scheme they went with there. They're just really limited with that little ball and the way they're sculpted. So I just wish they went with a little ball hinge like Revoltech does. Hopefully they'll do that on their future figures, but we'll just have to wait and see. I know they have another one up for pre-order right now that's like an exterminator for the bugs they're putting out. I'll put a link to that below if you want to check that out. But this one is a lot of fun. If you like Revoltech figures, I think you're going to really enjoy the articulation on this one. And if you just like cool original designs, I think this one's pretty unique and it's going to be fun to have on the shelf. And it can pair well with some other things like Kaiju number 9 or a Revoltech One Punch Man that's coming out next year, or just any sort of anthropomorphic animal or creature figures. So despite the minor flaws, I would still recommend this one. I like it a lot, and I think if you like other figures like the ones I've mentioned, you'll probably enjoy it too. So I hope this video was helpful if you're thinking about getting this figure. If you've already ordered it or you have it, let me know what you think in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.